Hey there, and welcome back to this random level 1 run of Elden Ring. Last time we fought Margit, and we also fought Nile at Castle Sol in order to get the secret medallion to go to the Halig tree. And today I'm starting out by being stupid and having no idea where I'm going, because I was trying to find the hidden pathway to the rise over there, but well, I'm kind of going the complete wrong way right now. Well, anyway, after meandering around for a while, I finally found my way again and went up to the rise, and I really only came this way so that I could avoid having to fight Borealis on the frozen lake. I also pick up the sorcery at the top, which I'll probably never be able to use, so why the hell did I even bother? And afterwards I can go ahead and get the other grays before heading to the Church of America to pick up the Sacred Tear. I also went through the Guardian's Garrison, and that was really because I thought there might have been something useful in here, because I really had no idea, but, well, aside from a couple of guys with some poles and a few dogs, there really wasn't much of interest. But there was this prayer book over here, which God knows if I'll even make use of it, and I also punched this guy down the ladder. Well, anyway, he kindly just climbs back up the ladder for me to kill him, so that was cool, and after this completely pointless little detour, I can ride over on this chain to reach the other side of the mountaintops and pick up the Grace, as well as the one at the Church of Repose. And now I can go ahead and fight Okina, because he's in the way, and also because his head gives me +3 dex, so I kind of want it, but of course I'm not going to get it that easily. Well, it didn't take too many tries, and after killing him, I pick up his severed head to use as a trophy for my future endeavors. Pick up the grace next to the Fire Giant's arena, and make sure that you blast this guy in the ass with a fire pot so that he can get himself killed via gravity for a random Sombra Smithing Stone. And now it's time to fight Fire Giant. And God knows, I sure as hell do not want to fight Fire Giant. I originally assumed this was going to be a long boring battle with plenty of one-shots, but as it turns out it was only 90% a long boring battle with plenty of one-shots, but that was still more than enough for me to not want to do it, so oh well. But as it turns out, I could actually survive most of his attacks with just a little bit of tweaking my talisman setup to have some more defense, and even more surprisingly, my damage wasn't actually all that bad. Well, phase 1 is still easy enough because his attacks are super slow and they're really easy to dodge as long as you're paying even the slightest bit of attention to whatever he's doing. But phase 2 is where it gets serious because now he starts shooting fire all over the place. Fortunately, the fire balls and fire orbs are still relatively easy to dodge, so as long as you don't get showered with fire or breathed on, you'll be perfectly fine. And eventually I managed to get his health down to almost dead, so because I didn't want to take any risks, I just hopped on Torrent and started riding all over the place, going in for free pot shots whenever there was an opportunity, and before long managed to land a killing blow. Well, before I head over to Fair Missoula, I wanted to go pretty much all over the place so that I could collect all the Death Root in order to complete Gurong's questline, because I want to have the Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone that you get at the end, because who knows, I might need it to upgrade some stuff eventually. Better safe than sorry, right? I guess. Well, anyway, a lot of the Death Root was in early areas of the game, so most of it wasn't really interesting or hard at all. Keyword there being most. Well, it wasn't all perfect, and I did have to kill a lot of bosses, and it also took me to the hidden path to the Halig tree, where I died from gravity by missing the invisible floor among other embarrassing deaths, including one at the hands of the Mimic Tear right at the end. But after this, I was all set to go ahead and give it all to Gurong. As a reward, he gives me some pointless garbage and also kills me, and afterwards, once I slapped some sense into him, I got stuck in his hurt box, which was quite funny, and then he can give me the rest of his rewards before piecing the hell out. Now I go back to Leyndell in order to pick up a couple of things that'll become inaccessible once I burn the Earth Tree and head to Fair Missoula, and I also pick up some other stuff that weren't in Leyndell but I felt might be useful at some point. You're awfully close to the edge there, Melina. Fair Missoula time, and this is probably gonna be hella painful, so no, I don't feel like dealing with it. I'm just gonna run past everything. Most of it at least. But I did try to fight this dragon, but considering it was going to take like 10 minutes and that he also managed to one-shot me, I said screw it instead. Well, I guess I'd better start running then, and I also took this opportunity to pick up a couple of things that were just lying around that I felt I might use at some point, and eventually, before long, I reached the Godskin Duo, and as you might have expected, my first attempts were less than ideal, and even the Banished Knights were out to bully me. So after some attempts, a lot of attempts, I realized that I'm definitely not going to win this fight with my current strategy, and so I'm gonna have to try out something a little less fair for them. Well, I did have an idea of something I wanted to try out, and yes, it's going to require sleep pots. And yes, it's also going to require all of this stuff that I'm buying and upgrading right here, so yeah, you've probably already figured it out. But anyway, I'm off to take a detour to kill myself in the consecrated snowfield. Let's face it, that's really the only interesting thing to do in the consecrated snowfield anyway, but I did go to the Ordina Evergel in order to gain access to the Halig tree, but the Albinoic archers were kind of being annoying, so after a while I decided I was going to try and stealth my way around, using Unseen Form and the Black Knife's chest piece, and it kind of worked, sort of. Well, at least this way I can avoid aggroing both archers at the same time, and that was good enough to allow me to reach the first one and kill her so that I could go ahead and kill the second one as well. And with this, there really isn't much stopping me, so after meandering around for a while trying to remember where the hell I'm supposed to go, I eventually managed to get all 4 flames lit. So the Halig tree, huh? Well, I'm not going to explore this entire place right now, I'm only here for one item, really. But before I can get there, I of course have to die, because it wouldn't be a level 1 run made by me otherwise, but I did resort to using the stealth again in order to avoid combat. Pick up the Pearl Drake Talisman +2 because its defense boost will probably be useful at some point, hopefully, and then of course just run past straight through everything in order to get to the shortcut before fighting Loretta, and I really like how you can just see her pop into existence. Remember when I died to Loretta in Karya Manor? Yeah, well, you get to see me do it again. And again. But hey, as it turns out, it only took me 3 tries, which, gotta admit, I'm kind of impressed. I honestly thought I would be here for like 30 minutes getting my ass kicked. But don't worry, we'll get to that part eventually. Well, with Loretta defeated, I can go ahead and pick up the Ancient Dragon Spinning Stone in the chest and head over to the Halig tree proper. I'm just kidding, I got security guard by the Cleanrot Knight outside. And then it's time to pick up Triple Rings of Light, which is absolutely not what I was here for. So afterwards I pick a fight with the Earth Travatar and he kicks my ass, because I'm bad, and also because the arena is bad and there's nowhere to run from all the golden shiny beams he throws at you. Well, anyway, I did eventually manage to kill him, and afterwards I can go ahead and pick up another Ancient Dragon Spinning Stone. That's at the end. This one's a somber one, apparently, and then I can head down in order to reach the item I've actually been here for, if I can pick it up, because apparently you don't pick it up from here. Marika's Source Seal. And then I got smacked by some Crystallians while I was doing some looting. And then I started being stupid by heading over to some catacombs in Liurnia in order to farm these imps for their head, because it actually gives you +2 strength, which I thought I was going to need for the setup I was trying to do. And eventually I realized that the Omen Killer Mask also gives you +2 strength, which means that was just a whole big waste of time. Head to the Windham Catacombs for the Lightning Scorpion Charm and get smacked by a crab and eaten by a corpse on the way out, because I wanted to finish the place up so that I could warp out of there, because I guess I didn't think of just leaving through the front door. And I killed my first watchdog, so that's cool, I guess. And then head over to Liurnia for this Deathbird, so you can get the Red-Feathered Branch Sword, and now I'm all ready for my shenanigans against the Godskin duo. So I don't know if I've said this before, but I'm kind of bad at this game, and just to make sure I'm going to write it in giant characters across the screen, so I had this whole plan of trying to use a whole bunch of buffs so that I could one-shot them with Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike, but as it turns out, I have no idea how any of this works. So I kind of just flubbed everything for a minute straight before trying it out with what I had, and it wasn't even close. As for my second attempt, I totally screwed it up by accidentally screaming in the Apostle's face, causing him to wake up and immediately kill me. And for my third attempt, well, I don't know if I've said this before, but I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm doing. So once again, it just took way too long, and I tried to finish it off with what I had, but again, it wasn't even close. So at this point, I just said, screw that mess, I'm going to just use sleep pots and try to figure it out from there. Use the charge attack crystal tier, but don't use the axe talisman for more charge attack damage, because that would be the obvious smart thing to do, and that's not how we do it around here. But make sure you use Blood Flame Blade and Golden Vow to get yourself more damage, and using the sleep pots to put them to sleep, you can pretty much just kill them for free before they get a chance to really do anything. After you kill both of them, you'll get an opportunity to rebuff yourself, and then you can put the next one to sleep, if you don't die like an idiot, that is. But on the second attempt, you can actually succeed, hopefully. And I almost screwed it up here when the noble got to use his big roll attack, but I managed to trade with him just in the nick of time in order to avoid horribly dying. At this point, the second apostle has showed up, and I figured I could probably just win by, actually fighting him legit this time. And yeah, I did almost die, but eventually I got the bleed proc, and that was all I had to do in order to finish him off. So now I went back to Round Table to upgrade my Bloodhound's Fang to +10, because it served me well and I think it deserves it. And now we're back to running past everything, straight into the void. At least until I reach the birds, that is. Man, these guys are way too fast for me to be able to just run past them, so Instead, they would just catch up to me and murder the hell out of me, and because I can't tank hits for shit, I would just immediately die, so I had to resort to the good old strategy of genociding them all. Fortunately, with the birds gone, I can go ahead and kill the ancient dragon, who has like no HP for some reason, and now I can start heading over to the Baldric Talisman +2, but the Banished Knight on the way kind of killed me, so I had to resort to taking this shortcut by dropping here instead. And while the Crucible Knight and the Beastmen were fighting, I used this opportunity to somewhat stealthily run to the ladder. But by the talisman is a bird, and I hate birds, so I killed him, and it caused me to fall down instead. Yeah. So now I'm stuck trying to climb the ladder again, but unfortunately there's no distractions for the Crucible Knight this time, so I had to just run past in the hope that I'd make it. I did not. So now I had to try and land down here again, but the birds were still being annoying, so yeah, it's official, I now hate birds. But at least when I get down here again, the Crucible Knight is being distracted, so I can make it up to the ladders without any issues. And then I can kill the bird and not fall down to pick up the Baldric Talisman +2, finally, and then die again. Well, with all of that taken care of, I can die on my way to the final grace, so after coming back I go ahead and kill the perpetrator so that I don't have to bother with him. And after dodging just one more attack, I can finally make it past the rest of it all by just running straight through and finally reach the last grace of this area. Before I go ahead and fight both bosses, however, it's time to take a little detour in order to pick up some stuff in preparation for them. So starting out with Alexander's questline, where he dies right in front of my eyes and gives me his soul. And then it's back to the consecrated snowfield for the putrid avatar. Yeah, he kills me, of course. But I did manage to kill him on my second try for his crystal tears. I now pick up the final somber stone bell bearing, and afterwards I immediately get myself ganked by all the beastmen around here. But now I can go ahead and fight Placidusax at least. Assuming I can get down to him correctly, that is. Well, for what it's worth, I think Placidusax should be fairly manageable, because, well, as long as I can avoid getting one-shotted, I should have more than enough time to... Yeah, so it turns out I am indeed getting one-shotted by pretty much all of Placidusax's attacks, so yeah, as it turns out this is going to be a right pain in the ass. So I decided to change up my strategy, so I went and upgraded the Great Stars to +24, trying to use Wild Strikes to get some good damage in, but yeah, this didn't really work well either. Basically, my damage still sucks, and Placidusax has a crap ton of resistance to bleed, so trying to bleed him is pretty much out of the question. And as it turns out, I'm still getting one-shotted by everything that isn't a Tail Swipe or a Fire Breath. Well, I kept on trying because I wasn't going to get anywhere if I just gave up, and I eventually decided to try out Lion's Claw along with the Stance Break Crystal Tear so that I could hopefully get some Stance Breaks, but it didn't really work well, especially considering the tear only lasts like 10 seconds and once it's gone, well, the stance breaks don't really happen all that much anymore. Not like I have the FP to sustain Lion's Claw spam anyway, so oh well, I guess it's time for another change in strategy. So head over to the Minor Erdtree in Altus in order to fight Mr. Wormface, and all I have to say about this fight is that my Deathlight resistance is pitiful, so I can't really avoid getting Deathlighted if I just get hit like 3 times. But eventually I did manage to kill Wormface, but I didn't land the crit, so I just got Deathlighted immediately afterwards, but the kill still counts, and that's all that matters. And I did this for the Crimson Spale Crystal Tier for the extra max HP boost, and I figured that maybe if I go all in on defense with this and talismans and armor and whatnot, I might just be able to avoid getting one-shotted. But I couldn't use Bloodhound's Fang anymore because I didn't have Millicent's Prosthesis to give me the dex I needed, so I looked up Placidusax's weaknesses, and it turns out he's weak to pierce damage apparently, so I decided to upgrade the Banished Knight's Halberd for this, and my strategy actually works, and it allowed me to survive many one-shots I couldn't survive otherwise, though not all of them. I even used the Rune Arc for the first time in the playthrough with Godric's Great Rune in the hope that maybe the extra survivability would let me survive some more one-shots, and I'm honestly not sure if it made a difference at all, so I just decided I wasn't going to waste them here. Well, I gave it some more attempts in order to keep on learning Placidusax's moveset a little better in the hopes that maybe once I was finally ready I'd be able to actually use Godric's Great Rune and get something going, and after a couple of more deaths I did exactly that, and I started by winning attempt. At this point I've started using Fire Grease in order to improve my damage, just a little bit because my damage still sucks even if I am using his weakness with pierce damage. But at least by now I know his moveset pretty well, so I know what to look for and when to dodge, and I also decided I was going to save my physic flask for the second phase since I didn't really need it for the first phase. Of course, I'm still using the good old staple of Golden Vow Ash of War in order to increase my defense and damage, and you can actually use the downtime in between Placidusax's giant lightning strikes in order to buff yourself, which is pretty cool because that means you get to keep your buffs going for basically the whole fight as long as you use that opportunity. And with all of my defense come together, I can even survive Placidusax's giant laser attack, which honestly is pretty impressive. I didn't think I could pull that off. And it's also really good because I can't dodge that attack at all. Unfortunately, this fight is still really freaking long, and my physic flask is bound to expire before the end of it, which means now I can start getting one-shotted by some attacks again. So it's basically a race against time in order to avoid seeing the giant laser attack, because if it does, I don't think I'll be able to survive it, and I don't think I'll be able to dodge it either, because it's a giant clusterfuck. Fortunately, at this point, I've gotten pretty good at dodging the rest of Placidusax's attack, and thankfully I was able to finally kill him and finish him off before he could use his giant laser again. So that's Placidusax down, probably the hardest boss so far, and, well, it was quite an ordeal, but I'm really happy with this win, honestly. So now all that's left is to defeat Maliketh and I can move on with the endgame, and fortunately I actually have a plan for this one, which means I think I should be able to knock it out relatively easily. Plan is toast and I officially hate Maliketh now. Yeah, so basically the plan was to spam Lion's Claw in order to stance break Maliketh over and over again by taking advantage of the fact that his recovery animation is super long, but as it turns out Lion's Claw just isn't fast enough. You know what is fast enough though? Fucking Maliketh. You can just dodge everything with a whole bunch of side steps, which makes it hard enough to land a single Lion's Claw, let alone two of them fast enough in order to actually get a stance break unless you get lucky. And because Maliketh moves around so much, that means his hurt box moves around so much as well, and considering that it's actually a lot smaller than you would expect of an enemy of his size, it's pretty darn hard to just land your hits even at the best of days. Lion's Claw does allow you to trade hits with Maliketh, but considering how likely you are to miss and the time you'll have to spend dodging or healing immediately afterwards if you decide to trade, it means that landing stance breaks really isn't as reliable as you would expect it to be. So since this wasn't working, I decided I was going to try out Flame of the Redmanes, but unfortunately it's long since been nerfed and it no longer deals any significant poise damage, and the upward cut skill that I tried just wasn't fast enough or accurate enough, so instead I resorted to the only other option I had in mind, which was the square off skill on the broadsword. The good news is that it's actually a little faster than Lion's Claw. The bad news is that it's a lot smaller and it makes it even harder to hit. So after a while I realized this wasn't working, and so I started out by going to fight Bernal in order to get the Blasphemous Claw, even though I suck at parrying. I just really didn't have any other options at this point, not ones that I could think of at least. So at this point I decided I was only going to attack when I knew it was safe, and for the first phase that opportunity was this move where Maliketh scrapes the ground with his dagger because it's hella slow, but turns out it's not as safe as I thought because the hitbox on this move lasts way longer than it has any right to. Also, Maliketh's hitbox is still hella jank and you can still easily miss. But fortunately, there's another opportunity to do damage, and that's the Beast Claw moves you can just jump over, assuming you can actually time it correctly, which is a lot harder than it needs to be, and also actually manage to hit Maliketh with your jumping heavy, which I had a lot of trouble doing apparently. The good news is that if you pull it off correctly, you can actually land 2 consecutive square-off heavy attacks during the big scraping move, and that allows you to get a free stance break. After the crit, you can use another square-off heavy for some more damage, and potentially even a second one for a stance break if you're lucky, but all of this is a lot harder than you'd expect to pull off, because if you try to use the second heavy too quickly, you'll just get a regular R2, which isn't good enough, and if you go too slow, you run the risk of having Maliketh dodge your attack and just kill you automatically, or you can just miss completely for no reason. For the second phase, my opportunity was simply going to parry Maliketh with the Blasphemous Claw, which as it turned out was pretty easy to do, but unfortunately I still struggled to actually hit him because his hitbox still moves all over the place and the broadsword is still really small. So I eventually switched back to the Great Stars, and this was actually a lot easier. For some reason I had a much easier time actually jumping over the Beast Claw moves without getting hit, even when I felt like I should have. Lion's Claw is also much safer against the scraping attack, and it can actually be followed up with an R1, and while that's not enough to get a stance break, a single jumping heavy attack will be able to do the trick immediately after, so if you're lucky you'll get a good sequence of attacks and you'll be able to get yourself a free stance break, assuming you don't get unlucky and just straight up miss an attack that has no business missing. Great Star's bigger hitbox certainly helps a ton here, though it's still not perfect. And now that I've gotten pretty good at first phase, I can start suffering against the second phase, with this big multi-hit attack being the bane of my existence. But it wasn't my only problem, because even with parries I still struggled to hit Maliketh, but fortunately at some point I accidentally put 2 parries back to back, and despite that I still managed to actually pull off 2 Lion's Claw to get the stance break, and this was actually a good thing, because now I know that I actually have a lot more time than I thought I did. Knowing that made me feel confident that I could afford to take my time a little bit more in order to set up properly to actually land both attacks. And now that I've figured that out, all I need to do is be able to dodge this godforsaken multi-hit move so that I can actually survive second phase. After a lot of time, I finally managed to find out the perfect after parry setup in order to land myself some consistent stance breaks every time. Now at this point I've been trying this out for over 3 hours and I'm starting to kind of lose my mind a little, so I decided to just take off all of my armor and go full in on offense because my defense really isn't doing anything, the only exception being the Opaline Bubble Tear and my Physic Flask in order to survive a single hit. Well, now all I had to do was to put my strategy and everything I've learned into practice, and on my winning attempt I kind of flubbed it early on and got myself hit by the scraping attack, causing me to lose my bubble shield. However, I didn't let that phase me and I simply kept on going as I had originally planned, and a short time later, without any more mistakes, I finally managed to reach second phase once again. Use the phase 2 opening to heal your FP up so you can use 2 Lion's Claw back to back and then run away from the follow-up. And afterwards you jump straight into the air, allowing me to dodge the Blade Beam attack and get myself a free parry. Afterwards I can run slightly to the right and go ahead and smack Maliketh's hind legs with 2 Lion's Claw to get his stance break before healing up my FP so that I'll be able to use more Lion's Claw later. Then I can go ahead and land a crit and follow it up with another Lion's Claw for some chunky damage. Now all I had to do was wait for Maliketh to give me another Blade Beam attack that I'll be able to parry in order to finally finish off this fight, but that's easier said than done because until then I have to dodge everything else Maliketh throws at me. This includes the big multi-slash attack, which has been a royal pain in my ass for the past 3 hours at this point, and he even decided to use it twice during this fight, but fortunately for me I'm wearing basically nothing and I have the power of light rolls on my side, and the extra distance made it a lot easier to actually dodge that attack. And it was all just one big matter of biding my time until the perfect moment came along. And then... And just like that, after 3 hours worth of attempts, I finally managed to take down Maliketh and earn myself the right to head over to the Ashen Capital to finish this run once and for all. But that's going to have to wait until next time, I think, because I've already done plenty enough in this video and it's starting to get really damn long at this point. So for the three of you who are still watching at this point, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure that you leave a like or dislike and subscribe or unsubscribe, leave a comment, just, all of the things. I don't think I need to explain them to you at this point.